Tourist, a podcast alone.
I'm your coming soon to screens near you host, Madelyn.
I'm your innovative world host, Emma.
And thanks for tuning in for a side quest episode of Talk This, where every other week we pick the topic of every other host's choice, and we talk about it for the show. So this week it's Emma's turn to choose our topic of discussion. So Emma, what are we going to be chatting about for the next, 45 to 65 minutes?
We are going to be talking about marketing, video games marketing specifically. We're not just giving you marketing tips here, but we're going to talk about clearly we are, judging by our millions of listeners. We are marketing gurus.
Yes, our robust social media presence.
But we'll be talking about video game marketing, how it's evolved over the years, how social media has affected it, what goes in, what do they do for it, why is it important, and whether you can ever really make a strong enough case to say that marketing was misleading.
Well, that seems like 5 minutes worth of discussion topics, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Breeze through that pretty quick.
Yeah.
So
that's just, those are the guiding questions.
I know.
Will we get to all of that? Who knows?
I'm just kidding. Where do you want to start? From what angle shall we approach this?
I guess we should probably just talk about, start light. Talk about fun marketing stuff that games have done. Or not so fun, but funny.
There's so much. In researching for this episode, my final conclusion, spoiler, is you really should just not market your game.
But see, if only, right? The trial of every indie studio out there is, why do we have to market our game? Do we really have to?
Okay, I take it back. If you're a AAA studio, you really should try to make your marketing campaign as bland as you possibly can and just not take any risks. Because over and over again, I've read something that is like, I know, somebody on the PR team was like, this is a great viral marketing idea. And then you read about it and you're like, what is this garbage? We're right in the middle of all the wars about misleading marketing and just bad marketing and all that right now. And let me tell you, game marketing has always been bad.
Yeah, it definitely comes from... it's an industry that has always been very dominated with men. I'll say it, just to say it. And I think you can sometimes tell that in some of these marketing things that Madelyn has found.
Some of them are truly horrifying. I don't even know if I can post the Sega one on our website. It's so gross.
Yeah, please don't, to be honest.
I showed it at this size to Click My Boyfriend, and he was like, oh, is that intentional? And then he, zoomed in to read the text, and he was like, oh, it's intentional.
Yeah. Go ahead, describe it. Give an audio description of this Sega ad to our listeners.
So this Sega ad features, I guess it's the right hand of a cartoon character grasping the joystick for a Sega. I don't even know what it's for. Some kind of Sega console.
One of their consoles.
Mega Drive, it looks like. Mega Drive. And
it's also like a weirdly hairy arm. I feel like I should point that out.
The hair is certainly rendered.
Yes.
Whether it's weirdly hairy, I'll leave that be. But there's certainly hair on the arm. The big tagline is, the more you play with it, the harder it gets. And it only gets worse from there, ladies and gents and everybody listening. If you read the fine print, it really only gets much worse.
Yeah.
And that was Sega's idea of marketing. Sega, hip and cool Sega, who you might remember from Console Generations side quest last time, with their Sonic the Hedgehog attracting the youths.
For a more pure, if still horrifying example, if you check our episode posts every once in a while, you may have seen in the Console Generation side quest.
No.
There's an ad for the Game Boy Color that's like, it comes in every color or whatever, and it's just people's tongues colored sticking out.
And they're bright, and it's so... Like, I don't even look at our episode posts sometimes, but this week I was like, you know what? I'm gonna look at it, because Emma works on these every time, and I'm gonna tell her what a great job she did. And I was rewarded with that horrifying image. But there's also, there's plenty of examples of more run-of-the-mill gross ad campaigns. I also have a nice image in our notes of one with some delightful plumber's cracks that says, "Finally, baseball without the chili dog farts."
Yes.
So gaming has always had that kind of gross boy, 13-year-old boy, marketing department streak.
Yep.
But there are also, there's something we've talked about on the show before. I think we talked about Your Mom Hates Dead Space 2 at some point.
Yeah, in our Dead Space episode.
Right. That would make sense. Which was an ad campaign that featured middle-aged women reacting in horror to Dead Space 2. And also, did you look at this White is Coming one? Did you click this link?
I did not. It sounded bad.
Ought to right now, because it just is much worse. So it's an ad for the PlayStation Portable featuring a white woman dressed in all white, grabbing the face of a black woman who's dressed in all black. It says, "PlayStation Portable, White is Coming."
Love that.
It's just like, how did this get past anyone? How did anybody look at this and think, this is fine?
I don't know, man.
There's tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of these. I feel like I should sprinkle them throughout the episode, to be honest, because there are just so many examples of ill-advised marketing campaigns.
Even, like, at events, for instance, it used to be common practice to have booth babes.
Mm-hmm.
Where you just have hot ladies at your game booth to draw in the gamers.
Capital G.
Yeah. So, like, even in, like, 2012, 2013, 2014, they were still pretty prominent at, like, E3 and stuff. PAX apparently banned them at some point. And it has since been proven that they're not very effective marketing strategies, apparently, because that's why they stopped using them, not because it's gross.
Well, speaking of E3, I wanted to talk a little bit about how marketing in the general conference world versus this new digital world we're in, how that's changed. You're in the games industry, so you're an expert. Do you think E3 will ever come back?
I'm pretty doubtful. Had Sony had already said they weren't going to be at E3 before.
Sony had already skipped 2019 and had already, as of January, said they were going to skip it in 2020 before, obviously. E3 didn't even bother doing a digital version, right? They just totally canceled.
Yeah. And Nintendo has been practically skipping it for a while. They schedule a direct during it, like near it, because people are paying attention to gaming news then, so it's a good strategy. But they don't actually go to E3. They just schedule a somewhat large direct during E3. So, like, the real main conference left then is, like, Microsoft, and even that's mostly, like, third-party stuff, usually. So, I don't know. I don't really know how investors think, because E3 is not really a consumer event, despite the, hype and publicity cycles around it. it's for, industry people and investors and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm not super familiar with the business aspect of that, so I don't know if it does feel particularly important to have like a bunch of business people all together. But also as someone who, wants to stay in the game industry, would not be super opposed if like conventions where you have to go party with people to get connections went away.
Emma, that will never go away. We've both opted into industries where that kind of like elbow rubbing, like being in the room, networking with people is probably how it gets done. The more you talked about this, the more I was like, oh, E3 is definitely coming back. Because, like, that's got to be the thing that the, like, investors love. That talking to people in the room has got to be how things happen. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know. Maybe, if Sony had already decided that it was not worth attending, then maybe I'm overestimating the power of that.
Yeah.
Maybe everybody is just going to the same Silicon Valley cafes, or same Tokyo cafes, I guess. And chatting there, and whatever, and E3 isn't that important.
Yeah.
Because from a marketing perspective, I mean, purely from that perspective and not from the money perspective, not that marketing isn't also money, but it does seem like, well, why would you even bother, right? Unless you're sure you're going to be the big fish at E3, why not plan your own direct style thing where you get to release it when you want and you're not competing with anybody else?
Yeah, like, as a consumer, in some ways, I will say that, like, having all that news localized over a weekend as opposed to spread out over, like, 4 months of the summer with Jeff Keighley's Summer of Gaming event,
as I breed it every time,
was nice a little bit, but at the same time I just felt like there was like the having it spread out over the summer did allow for more different groups to sort of get attention, like Wholesome Games Direct and different indie presentations and stuff like that, when usually during E3 weekend it's all about the big boys.
Well, it's just like, why would you take the risk of all of your work being upstaged by like a fun lady in a jumpsuit?
Sure.
Right? Like, going to E3 and it's like, I don't even know if this happened at E3. I don't know where Ikumi Nakamura blew up. But no, it was E3. It was the last E3.
It was E3.
It's like, imagine all the work that everybody did only for her to be this like blow up meme that just totally eclipsed everything else. That's not meant as a dig. She's very cute and like deserves to be a meme and does excellent work. But also,
she deserves to be a meme.
Like, I get it. It's a good meme. Like, it's good. That wasn't meant as a dig in any way. It was just like, oh boy. Like, just like on a micro scale. Like, imagine all the work that went into prepping presentations that everyone was like, whatever. Let's talk about her. Like, being adorable on stage.
I mean, Nintendo has been pretty much swearing by this Direct thing for years now. I can't remember what they were called, but Sony was doing a few that were like pretty much exactly the same as the Nintendo Direct. State of Play, like this year and last year. But yeah, I mean, you can fully control what's there. There's no like awkward liveness about it because it's pre-recorded, right?
On the other hand, sometimes the awkward liveness is what gets people talking about it. Whether that's usually probably in a bad way, so it's probably not worth the risk. But I don't know though, like, is it worth your Uncharted 4 demonstration freezing during the presentation if that gets everybody talking about it, right? Obviously no one is thinking that your game would actually release in that kind of a buggy state.
Oh. Uh-huh. Sure.
Just saying.
Yeah.
So all this to say, it will be sad from a Twitter memes well, I don't know. It'll be sad from a Twitter memes perspective to lose something like E3, but that's okay.
I mean, I certainly don't think there will be a physical conference this year. PAX has optimistically announced dates in like June and July, but like, I don't think that'll happen.
That's a shame.
So
I'm gonna miss PAX this year.
Yeah.
Speaking of PAX...
I mean, we'll see. Maybe it magically goes away in March. It's just like a nice little localized year.
Right? Yeah, 1 year expire. It actually, I'm just getting word. Sorry, there's a fresh Nintendo Direct. Coronavirus is actually scheduled to disappear on March 31st at the end of the fiscal quarter.
I don't know if it was real or if there was an edit, but they did like a Super Nintendo World Direct, and there was like a picture, I think it was the president or something, with like Mario and Luigi saying like, "This is the last time I'll see you before you die in April."
No! That can't be real. That's a whole other marketing thing that we should probably save for some other episode at some other point.
Oh yeah, I mean, Doug Bowser talked about it and said it's like a special anniversary thing, right? Like they're not going to do it regularly for games, just old games that have anniversaries. So it's like, but that's also bad.
Yeah.
I'd want to like look at him and you'd be like, you understand why that's bad, right? Do you know how many people want to play your old games? Apparently not.
Apparently you do, and you know that you want to get them to buy it.
I mean, that's fair.
It probably will work. Like, Clickbait Boyfriend was excited about that Mario game thing, but we haven't bought it. But we will, probably, before March.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have probably waited several years to buy it.
I guess so.
And you should probably wait several years to buy any more games, having seen a picture of your shelf today.
I mean, I know there's definitely certain games where they would get me with that marketing tactic, you know? And I am sad about it.
If you find an effective marketing gimmick, you gotta go with it.
I guess so.
Speaking of which, and speaking of PAX East, the high watermark for games marketing, really just peak, really can't beat this, is Cloud Strife and Butterfinger.
Yeah. That's like a marketing thing that's like so bad, it just loops around again. Like, it's just so awful and weird and corporate that it's just like, it comes back around and it's like, this is cool, actually.
I'll probably, like, that's gotta have been the last free food sample that I will have eaten for like a year.
Yeah.
More than that.
I mean,
like
they were
wrappered,
so that is a little bit different.
Yes, you're right. We weren't reaching into a gigantic bowl of unwrapped Butterfingers.
Yeah.
That would be terrible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, game marketing firms, eat your heart out. Can't beat that.
Really can't.
Final Fantasy VII has a whole history of weird marketing tie-ins.
Yeah.
There's a car, right? There's one where he's, like, driving a car.
Probably.
Yeah, there's a lot. Let's see. Let's sprinkle in some more fun stuff. Let's see. On the fun side, EA sent out illegal brass knuckles to the press. They only discovered after the fact, after they had sent out these celebratory brass knuckles, that these were illegal in most of the areas where they had sent them, particularly in California. And even, like, shipping them was, like, illegal, let alone having them. So, yeah. There's that. That must have been a tough meeting.
Yeah. Imagine, like, almost getting all the press for your game, like, arrested for sending them brass knuckles.
Maybe it was intentional. Yeah, I read about that. I was just like, how?
Somebody thought it was a really good idea, and nobody thought
feels
beyond
like
that.
So many steps to get to that point where someone could have said, you know, this is not... Like, getting them made. Where did they get them made?
I don't know. The brass knuckle factory.
They ask you when you mail stuff, are there any weapons in this? And they had to say no.
I mean, I just, like, why were they real? They could have sent, like, like, styrofoam ones.
But so you can't do that or you're Fallout 76.
Oh, I see.
With their $200 special edition with the vinyl bag as opposed to the canvas bag.
That's slightly different, though, because you are paying $200 for a high-quality bag.
I know.
As opposed to just getting some hype merchandise.
I know. I'm mostly kidding. But that is another... Again, it just feels like... Isn't merchandise somebody's job at these companies?
It should be, yeah. I mean, you could go into a whole problem, too, of, like, games companies sending, like, streamers and stuff, like, merch and things before they play their game. Which is, a little uncomfortable, but I think that's self-explanatory.
That's fine. I took a lot of free pins at PAX.
Sure.
I took that free Animal Crossing New Horizons bag, and then I talked about it on the show.
You didn't get, like, a gamer chair, though.
Ethics in journalism. But yeah, both of those cases, it's just like, man, it really this doesn't feel like something that should have gone that far. You should not have promised that bag and then claimed it was too expensive. You should not have mailed illegal weapons to hundreds of people.
Yep.
Just a lot. I do feel like a lot of these kind of lists, if you Google worst games marketing of all time, which is not how I research for the show, of course.
Of course.
A lot of the lists are dated to 5 years ago or more.
Yeah.
And it does feel like some of these stunts are a little bit of a relic, hopefully in a good way, of the pre-social media hype era. Now, whether social media is better or worse than some ultimately relatively harmless, dumb real-world stunts, that's another can of worms.
Yeah.
But the plus side is that we don't get nonsense like Mass Effect Space Edition happening quite so often.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is where they put copies of Mass Effect 3 into weather balloons that they launched, and then you could drop to Earth and you could claim your copy of Mass Effect if you found them. Did not end up working out very well. Spoiler alert.
What a terrible idea.
One landed on a farm.
Yeah.
Private property, couldn't recover it. One landed in a tree that you couldn't get to. Just a lot.
I will say, of big stunt marketing that has somewhat survived, I am pretty fond of games that use ARGs to a certain extent, like Oxenfree did a little ARG with lots of codes and stuff for people to figure out. AI the Somnium Files had a sort of YouTube series where one of the characters was a virtual idol for a while, and there's a little story going on with that, outside the realm of the game. So I'm fond of that in terms of stunts that are actually sort of helped by social media, I guess, as well.
But you're not into... Oh my gosh, I can't remember the game. The game with all the parasocial people.
What?
The League of Legends.
Oh. I mean, I think that's a little different, though. People can like KDA. I find them a little off-putting. I think it's because they're an extended thing. They're just a thing that exists now. As opposed to ARGs have a start and an end point. Right? Because they're games.
Right. Fair enough. There was a little bit of backlash. Portal 2 is sort of famous for having done something like this. But then the more I read about it, the more I was like, well, people were kind of pissed because they promised the game would be released early and it was released less than a day early.
Yeah.
Which, you know what? Maybe we've all just gotten more used to being free marketing at this point. Because I was like, folks, you got what you signed up for here. So... Do you want to dive in? What makes good game marketing?
I don't know. I don't know, honestly. I mean, you should try not to lie.
Good.
I mean, all marketing is lies to a certain extent, because you're presenting its best face. You're not like, and here's the scene where their hand glitches out and it looks like it's broken. We promise this will be fixed.
Honestly, that would be a bold... I would like to see that trailer. The trailer that's like, here's the stuff our QA team hasn't quite figured out why it's happening yet. Honestly, in the wake of Cyberpunk, I feel like that would go super mega viral and be pretty successful.
Sure, yeah.
In the wake of Cyberpunk.
The wake. Yeah.
You basically want to do anything that you can to not have things be described as in the wake of your game.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't really know what makes good games marketing. Just because it's easier to say the ways that could be bad, right? And if it's not any of those things, then it's fine.
Okay, so here's the list so far then. Alright. Don't do things that are racially insensitive at best. Don't put colorful tongues into your marketing. Yes. Don't bring moms into it unless the moms are enjoying the game.
Yes.
Which we can talk about. Don't be gross and for boys.
Yeah.
Here's one I didn't mention yet. Don't do an AMA on 8chan.
Yes.
Can you believe that THQ Nordic stuff was last year?
Can you believe that nobody cares anymore?
There's more to worry about.
I guess. Is there? That was pretty bad.
Just what a disaster. Just what an unforced error.
I don't actually, I probably should have followed up on that story, but I don't actually know if they fired anybody in the end.
Anyway.
And they're, releasing stuff like the SpongeBob game came out, so who cares?
So don't do that. Or find a way to make...
Or do it, People talked about it, and then they forgot it. So, did their bottom line see any harm? I don't know.
I still don't think it was an effective marketing strategy. How about that?
Sure.
Don't...
It was effective for bringing in people from 8chan.
You know what? I guess you're right. That's just... If that's your marketing...
I mean, I'd prefer that games companies didn't do that, but, that's the reason they do that is because they're trying to reach that audience.
Oof. Okay, well, just leaving that behind and continuing my list of don'ts. Don't neglect to check local regulations on weapons and weapons shipping.
Don't send people weapons.
Here's one related that I haven't talked about yet. Don't make an app called Hire a Hitman for Facebook to promote your game Hitman that allows you to generate hits on people's friends to post on their Facebook wall with fake assassination videos. See,
I see the idea behind that, right? You played, Assassin in school, right?
Yes.
Where you had to, mark a person. So I think that's, the idea there. And I'm sure people didn't really understand how people would use social media for that.
So it's 2012. So social media is not new at this point.
Yeah, but is there any, widespread discussion about social media harassment? Does anyone take that seriously at that point?
Fair enough. Let me just give you a little bit more context for this. Just a few other nuggets from this app. Just for the people listening, trying to decide what not to do with their marketing. Sure. Here it is. So, first of all, you got to make, you got to customize the assassination a little bit. So you could, give reasons. Here are the two examples that Ars Technica gives. Farts too much, cheating on their partner. Imagine using Hire a Hitman, the Facebook app, to, try to out someone for cheating on their partner. Imagine. Anyway. And you get to choose identifying features for the target, including, quote, awful makeup, ginger hair, tiny penis, and small tits.
Good.
A lot going on here. Then it would post to their Facebook with the caption, "I hope you get killed by a hitman." And it would even kind of grab images from their Facebook photos to like be like a light flashing before their eyes kind of thing.
Yeah. There's like a nugget of a good idea in there, but it's been run through like a, 13-year-old boy's brain and come out on the other side with that nugget of a good idea totally encased in poop.
Just like the PAX East bowl of unwrapped Kit Kats.
No.
Just a pile of brown nuggets.
They were wrapped in wrapping.
Okay, so don't do that. Be sure to price check. Like, don't neglect to price check the promised merch you're sending before you send it. Don't do anything with balloons. There are a lot of weird balloon-related stunts in games history.
Yeah.
That just I don't get. A lot of balloon badness. And maybe skip E3.
There you go. That's the keys to success.
Don't use Butterfinger, because that's kind of been done.
Yeah. Just look like a copycat now.
Yeah, Candy's probably out for a couple years. So, do you want to touch Cyberpunk?
Let's talk a little generally about, like, why is marketing your game important, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some of it's kind of obvious, right? Like, you want people to buy your game. So you have to let people know that your game exists. If you just release it onto Steam, shocker, no one will see it or buy it. You have to put it somewhere and do something with it and get some amount of eyes on it before you put it out if you want it to sell anything. So that's self-explanatory. I mean, the other question is, like, why do game companies announce games so early, right?
Yes.
And it's to start generating those hype cycles and to open pre-orders for the game, too, right? Especially for big companies, pre-orders are super, super important. Because you're locking down customers likely before they'll see a lot of reviews for the game. Because if you're using your strict, embargo, they're not seeing reviews. It's almost too late to cancel by the time they're seeing reviews. So they're buying it just based on what your marketing machine. It gives you some sense of the money you're getting on release day. And a sense of the expected popularity of the game so that you know, like, what you can expect at that time period, which I imagine is somewhat important for factoring into, like, budget decisions, is having some idea of how much money you're going to make. And it's very important to, make money. This isn't just games. I've heard, like, the book industry also puts a lot of value on pre-orders, in terms of knowing, like, how well it's going to do and how much should be put behind that book, so it's like a iterative thing. Like, you get some marketing, you get pre-orders, they're like, oh, people like this, you get some more marketing, etc. So, yeah. So marketing is meant to get you really hyped for the game. You're like, wow, that looks really cool. I'm going to pre-order it so that I can play it on release day. And that's what you do. And initially the idea behind pre-orders is that, like, there would be, for a really popular game, there might be a limited number of copies. So you're putting down a pre-order so that you can get it and don't have to wait for a while for, like, back ordering to happen. But nowadays, that's not really a problem. Like, no matter how many pre-orders there'll be enough to put some on store shelves, too. So pre-orders are literally now more for the business than they are for the consumer, I guess.
Well, you sold me. Marketing. Good thing. I do wonder, like, what percentage of pre-orders come in at what point. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm sure I'm sure a lot of games get a lot as soon as they open pre-orders, you know?
I just never do it that way.
Sure.
If I pre-order a game, I've pre-ordered it a couple days ahead of time so that I can, like, walk to GameStop and pick it up day of.
Sure, yeah. It sort of depends for me. I definitely pre-ordered, like, Nier Replicant as soon as pre-orders were open for that. I would have for, like, Melody of Memory if I had known what system I wanted it on at the time. I think I probably pretty much did for Kingdom Hearts 3. I was going back and forth on which, you know, hype edition I wanted. So I'm definitely guilty of buying into the pre-order machine, you know?
I guess my feeling, though, is it's not like when a game is announced, pre-orders usually open, right? So I still feel like there's a question.
Depends, yeah.
I mean, I know. But for these games that get a lot of hate or whatever reaction, all of the notorious games that were in development for 10 years or whatever you want to say about it, like, it does feel like, well, probably you just should have waited until the game was done to announce it. I'm just kidding. That's an exaggeration, but...
I mean, some people really do believe that, though. Like, that's part of... Well, depends. That's somewhat part of Nintendo's strategy. They either announce games really early or, like, a month before they're coming out. There's no in between.
Well, it just feels like because people don't understand what the development process is like, right? If there was a wider understanding of, oh, just because Nintendo has dropped, like, a 30-second trailer for Breath of the Wild 2 at the end of a direct as a hype thing, doesn't mean that game is coming anytime in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably is, but, you know, then that would feel like a whole different ball game. But it does feel like whenever you read about the development cycles for these games that seemingly took 5+ years to create, it's never the whole team was working on this game linearly for those 7 years, right? It's always like, well, they started it, and then they switched engines, and then there was another game that needed all hands on deck, and...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly think that a lot of, like, the really, like, short teasers you'll see are meant to be more, like, pre-production starting.
Yeah.
We've decided we're making this. And that's really all they're meant to be signifying of where they are in development.
Which, that makes sense to me if you are anything below a AAA studio, right? Because you need someone, or, you know, especially for indies. But because you need that hype to get an idea of how much you can spend on the game, right?
Sure, yeah.
But it does...
I mean, for indies, I mean, there is also, like, a benefit of just doing, like, a quick hype cycle, right? Is that be fresh on your mind, people are thinking about it, it comes out, they buy it.
Right. That's fair.
For indies, wish listing on Steam is really important for estimating that. It's like that's like the equivalent of pre-orders.
Like, I would be excited to see what Supergiant is going to be making next, right? Like, I'd be excited to get the, like, here's the little teaser. Although they probably don't need to do that anymore, right? Like...
Yeah.
But, like, a company of that size and that level of pretty established at this point. Pretty established. They're, like, Game of the Year contender game. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of company that I feel like could really benefit from like, we're entering pre-production. Like, get excited for this game in 3 years. Whereas when, like, Sony or whatever, or CD Projekt does that, where it's like, here's this game that's coming in 8 years, it's a little bit like, well, why? You've other game, like, you didn't need to do this. Yeah.
I mean, I imagine, again, I'm not super familiar with all the business
I mean, I'm
stuff
sure it's
of
an
AAA
investor's
games.
thing, of course.
Yeah.
But it's also dumb.
And I mean, the teaser for Cyberpunk came out I remember it coming out because I thought it was really dope looking. I was like, you're gonna be this cool lady with blades for arms who gets, like, you know, wrapped up in, like, a conspiracy type thing. That was the feeling the trailer gave me. And it's not, well, it sort of is that, I guess, but it's not exactly what the teaser made me excited for. And that's sort of the problem, right? If you're basing your excitement and even your pre-order off of what you're excited for from what you've decided the game is from the trailer, right? In a lot of cases, you're setting yourself up for disappointment because the game you get is the actual game, not the one that you've built in your head.
But at the same time, gameplay trailers are boring.
But at the same time, everybody hates cinematic trailers.
I love cinematic trailers. That's all I want. Here's how to market your game. Get a banger of a song from Utada Hikaru and sync your action to it. Done. I'll buy it. No, really get a banger of a song is the way to successfully trailer. That's my big belief.
Get a banger of a song, but don't make it too weird. There was some trailer that's got, like, I mean, maybe it gets eyes on it, but it was like X Gotta Give It To Ya, but like slow acoustic version.
Oh.
It was very weird. I can't even remember what the game was anymore. It was just during some big event that was like, this is a weird choice.
No, what I'm thinking...
Or the Phoenix Rising trailer that used, like, James Brown. Like, Itchy Toes or whatever that song's called.
Okay, not all bangers will work.
Or, like, Ants in My Pants? Is that the song from James Brown?
I'm just saying, like, what I'm thinking of here is Bug Snacks.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
Which absolutely...
Make your own catchy song.
That's what I'm saying. You need to get somebody to write a catchy song for you. This applies to the Utada songs, too.
Yes.
Give Skrillex a call.
Call Skrillex. He will do it.
He
will make you a song.
No, but having a really good song in your trailer is enough. I mean, really, it's just like, the goal with a trailer has to be, you need to become a meme, but not in a bad way. In a moderately annoying way, it can be fine. That's fine. Bugsnax is kind of moderately annoying as a meme. But just, like, you need to do anything you can to avoid the meme being the yellow background that you use to post your delay announcements.
Yes.
'Cause that can't be it. I do really believe, though, that your Twitter presence should be boring.
Again, though, like, I mean, let's talk about Cyberpunk a little bit.
Okay.
How about it? So, regardless of the stuff that's happened post-release, okay, just ignore the state of the game for a second.
We're playing it on PC. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. They made back, I mean, have they now, but initially, they made back their costs in, like, a couple of days. So...
Well, they had made back their costs pre-release, I thought. I thought pre-orders totally covered it.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure they sold a bunch more.
Yeah. So, like, their marketing worked. So their very edgy, you know, Twitter account was very effective. And you can look at stuff like Fall Guys, like whatever. People don't pay attention to Fall Guys anymore, but that was very big upon release, and everybody's like, look at the Fall Guys Twitter, look at them go.
I think Fall Guys is the exception that proves the rule, though, because I feel like that proves just how difficult it is to walk that, like basically they're like the Wendy's Twitter, Fall Guys, right? Except that Mediatonic isn't big enough that it comes across as, like, completely disingenuous, right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's the exception of, like, wow, that is, like, a truly, really unique Twitter presence that absolutely could have failed if it had gone, like, half a step further in any direction.
I mean, even they've had, like, little things that made me go,
Yeah.
You know? Like, some, like, Dr. Disrespect jokes and stuff on there, which is like, just please let him go away. I wish for him to leave.
But I think what worked there is that they made the marketing team visible.
Yeah.
Right? The fact that it was like Oliver, if that's even his real name. Like the fact that it was like literally like very acknowledged, like there is someone running this Twitter account and like they are a person. I feel like gave some of that a different tone and a different feel than if they had continued to keep it behind the kind of invisible PR veneer of most company Twitters. It made it feel a little bit more genuine when the person was engaging with all the memery than if, like, you know, Sony's Twitter, whenever Sony's Twitter tries to, like, ask a question.
I mean, but you see this more and more with, like, social media accounts wanting to, like, interact with people. Like, I can't remember if it was the Square Enix or the Kingdom Hearts account that was, like, you know, like, tweet your favorite Melody of Memory team and emojis at us, you know?
Oh, the Square Enix account has been doing a lot of that lately. They just did the, you know, tell us you're a Square Enix fan without saying you're a Square Enix fan.
Yeah. Which that seems to work fine for them, you know? And that's, like, you know, that's relatively pure compared to, you know, like, CDPR's presence with Cyberpunk. But again, like, that worked, you know? You can't say that their Twitter account hurt them. I'm sure it helped them, in fact. Just because it wasn't working on us doesn't mean that they weren't drawing in large audiences.
Totally. I guess I'm saying it's high risk, high reward to have a Twitter account that has a tone.
Yes.
Because, like, for example, like, even this, like, light Square Enix engagement stuff is, like, I would not really describe that as an account that has any kind of a tone. It's, like, they're seeing things on Twitter and they're, like, taking it 2 weeks later. That's whatever. That's, like, okay, Grandpa Square. Like, that's fine. But it does feel like having an account that is very specific, like, you better do a good job with it. And also, you better release your game as expected.
Yeah.
Because I do think, I mean, even just thinking about the delay announcements, right? If you were just less engaged on Twitter to begin with, not to say that there wouldn't be as much anger, because of course there would. Delays, unacceptable. But it feels like the more that you engage, the more it becomes personal that or like the more you tell people that it will for sure release on that day and then announce the next day that it won't, the more personal it feels. And that's the double-edged sword of that kind of more engaged presence.
Sure, yeah. I mean, definitely, like, while their pre-release marketing definitely made an impact, the fact that Cyberpunk didn't super follow up on a lot of that has pretty immediately blown through a large amount of goodwill for that company. Of which they had tons stockpiled, right?
Yeah.
People love The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3 is like God among games.
The Witcher 3 invented dads.
Exactly.
We didn't have dads before that game.
And I mean, even like, you know, like, it just bad. The GOG thing was just very bad.
Just what nobody made them do that. Like, what an unforced error. Just, like, why? I have so many questions, like...
Yeah, like, I mean, did they just think that, like, it was too small for anybody to really care releasing Devotion? That China wouldn't bother them about it? Apparently, I'm not one for conspiracy theories, okay? But this is just sort of business. Apparently, Cyberpunk did really well in China.
Yeah.
So, maybe that's why
But
maybe the
they should have
financials
known
came
that.
in
Like, no
and
doubt
China
they
was
knew
like,
that it was going to do well, and like that can't have come as a surprise.
I know, yeah. But yeah, like I don't understand how they didn't like anticipate that they were gonna get some pushback from. I don't understand why they felt. I mean, I do understand why they felt the need to lie about it. I don't know why they thought anybody would believe them. Messages from many gamers. Like, why even say that? Why not just be like, we're not putting devotion on? Why give a fake excuse? You did not get messages from many gamers.
Maybe there are a lot of gamers in the Chinese government. You don't know.
You got message from biggest gamer Xi Jinping.
Look, I would be pissed if I couldn't play Kingdom Hearts anymore, too.
I think Winnie the Pooh is just whited out in China.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
I would be pissed if I couldn't play Kingdom Hearts without feeling like it was a personal slight against me. If I had the power as a leader of a large country to black out that slight, heck yeah, of course I would.
But yeah, I mean, it's just, especially compared to, like, their marketing for Cyberpunk and, like, their promises of, like, you can be whoever you want to be a cool punk, you're so cool, and then they're like, oh, the gamers said that we can't release devotion.
Oh, the gamers.
The gamers came to our house and they said no. It's just a little, like, so bad timing.
How do you come back from that? Here's the marketing challenge of the week. How do they get people back?
I mean, you know, you got this whole thing, and, okay, people have compared this to No Man's Sky.
I've seen
but,
that.
Like, No Man's Sky was not what everyone thought it would be, and it was not great upon release, but it wasn't fundamentally broken on any systems. Okay, so I do think there's a fundamental difference there. It was a functioning game. It functioned. It did things. It worked. But I've seen people say, like, oh, like, it's going to be like a No Man's Sky sort of story, right? They're going to keep working on this, and in a couple of years, everybody will be like, wow, this game is actually super cool now. Everybody should check it out. And they'll, you know, win Best Continuing Game at the Game Awards in 2024 or whatever.
I guess, but I do still think of No Man's Sky, even though I know that it's totally different. And, like, I see it and I'm like, oh yeah, the empty game.
Yeah.
And that has not got out of my brain, even as someone who is probably more engaged with that narrative than most people who were casually interested in that game.
Yeah, I think that that's the idea that a lot of people have. There's going to be some big, like, comeback story of, like, updating it and fixing it and stuff. In which case, I mean, I saw someone, I can't remember, but, like, propose this on Twitter of, like, you know, maybe these AAA companies making huge games should start thinking about trying out early access.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, a lot of games release buggy and need to have a day one patch and even patches after that for stuff that's going wrong, you know? Because games are hard. And the bigger your game is, the harder it is because there's so many systems smacking up against one another. And it can be hard to predict all the different things that'll do. So if they had said, like, their first delay, if they had been like, we're gonna release this in a couple more months, and we're gonna call it early access, because we want to get you playing it, but we're gonna be updating this as we go, and, you know, getting feedback from the community, getting all you guys' thoughts on the game and what you want from it.
Messages from gamers.
Yeah, like, that, I think, I mean, would people have still been sort of upset about it? Sure. But it's providing an opportunity for them to, like, get involved in their favorite game, you know? And it also gives them some breathing room for the fact that it's going to come out a big mess. Because there's more forgiveness for when a game comes out early access, right? Because that's the idea. I mean, that's what they did with Hades, right? Hades was a completely different game when it came out in early access. Not just in the fact that it had tons less content, but in just the way that it played, like the way weapons felt and stuff like that. And now it's a Game of the Year contender.
So I hear you. I have a number of concerns about that on the AAA scale.
Sure.
Namely, that, crunch is already endemic.
Okay, but sure, crunch is bad, but it's literally no different. It's just, I'm thinking about this from a marketing perspective. Releasing in early access the way it is now doesn't get you as much backlash, and it's exactly the same situation for the devs.
I guess that's true. I guess I was just thinking, like, well, imagine them doing this in June, and then, like, I mean, I'm sure in this case it doesn't really change anything, but I'm just thinking of all of these kind of games as service and what I've heard about what the development of that is like, where it's this just, like, constant churn. And from the marketing perspective, it seems like a great idea to allow people to feel even more invested in the game and getting what they want out of the game. But man, you give the gamers an inch, and they are going to take a mile. I could see it with this game in particular, with the levels of hype. Even if releasing the buggy game into early access mitigates the immediate backlash if this game is not finished, I could see a second tidal wave of backlash when people don't get what they want.
Sure. I mean, it's obviously about how you frame it, right?
Right.
But, like, just from, like, as good as your QA team is, on a game like Cyberpunk, you're simply not going to find everything if you don't have, like, widespread testing, I think. So there's also that benefit, right, of you have free labor reporting bugs to you, basically.
Right. Yeah. And
all QA has to do is, like, reproduce them and write it up. They don't have to actually go looking for them. Not that you have to look super far in Cyberpunk right now.
I guess what I'm saying is, I think that it's a good idea in theory, but I think that the gamers will ruin it as they ruin everything.
Sure.
That's my take.
My take is I really don't like how all companies have decided that referring to their customers as gamers is a cool thing now. I really hate it. I don't want to be referred to as a gamer.
Is player better?
Player feels better, yeah.
A little less loaded.
I don't really know why it feels better. I think it's just because
there's not called Playergate.
Yeah, exactly. There's not as much toxic association surrounding player. And even that feels like a little more neutral, right? Like, that's just, you play things.
Yeah.
It still feels like it's describing something more neutrally. And then, gamer.
Content experiencer.
Sure. That's a little clunky, but I'd go for that, too.
By the way, there's a lot of buzz on Twitter of, like, has anything ever been recalled like this game before?
Apparently the Arkham Knight PC version was pulled, but it wasn't as big of a, like, fiasco, I guess.
All I could find, and obviously this is for a very different reason, but it was Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, which was pulled for its, like, hot coffee minigame.
Yeah.
And because that bumped up the rating. Although I saw some conflicting reports that in that case they were even trying to get physical copies back. So perhaps even more extreme.
That is a little bit more extreme also because, like, they're like, yeah, I don't know. They're, like, actively being like, oh no, I gotta pull it,
Yeah. You're right. We just need the U.S. government to get involved on Cyberpunk. And
yes. I mean, in this case, it's 100% Sony throwing a middle finger to them. And, like, they can totally justify it with, like, their refund policy, right? They only allow refunds for faulty products, and obviously they can't sell a faulty product on their store. A farty product, as they say in the official documentation. So I see the logic there. Like, if they're given refunds because it's faulty, how can they sell it on their store, right?
Yeah.
But it's 100% a petty move.
You love to see it. I love beef.
I mean, I think it would be nice if, like, it also forced Sony's hand to, like, go through games that are actual faulty products on their store, but they're not 100% not going to do that, so.
Sad trombone.
Yeah.
So the takeaway then is you just need to get Twitch interested in your game, and then you're good.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, in some ways. You know, give a bunch of streamers the code, tell them to play it, they'll do it. People tune in to see their favorite streamers. So what's that? It's a cool game. PlayStation Plus also worked super well for, like, Rocket League and Fall Guys. Mm-hmm. So if you got, like, a massive multiplayer competition game, offering it free for a while can be a really good idea, especially if there's ways for people to make microtransactions, you know?
Yep.
So there you go.
Or make Wii Sports. That's the other option.
Just make Wii Sports. When will they make Switch Sports?
Seriously.
I mean, I guess Ring Fit is sort of Switch
No, it's
Sports,
not the same.
It's different. Yeah.
I need to get back to Ring Fit.
Apparently the Wii U version of Wii Sports was not super great, so maybe that's turned them off of it.
Switch Sports. You heard it here first, folks. This is the teaser trailer. Sponsored by Nintendo.
Coming when it's ready.
For 1 month only.
Oh, man. I will hate if Nintendo just starts doing, like, anniversary releases for all their major games. I will hate it so much.
When's Breath of the Wild's 5-year anniversary?
They can't re-release. They're like, it's 5 years old now. Say bye-bye to Breath of the Wild. Leaving March 31st.
I'm just saying. It would get people
You
talking.
didn't need it for longer than that, did you?
It would get, if you haven't played it already. They invented open world games, Emma.
I know they did.
And they can take them away at any time.
They invented nature. You know how Persona 5 invented Shibuya?
I do.
Breath of the Wild just invented trees.
You're absolutely right. Did you know Super Smash Brothers invented brothers?
Wow.
Weirdly invented before dads. The Witcher 3.
Interesting.
That's really how to market your game. That's how I would market my game. I'd just be like, this game invented this. And I'd throw it out on Twitter and I'd see what sticks.
I wonder if that would get you sued. If that would finally be the thing that would be like, they're clearly making false promises here.
I'd say it's clearly satire.
No Man's Sky was actually sued for false marketing, but they were not. They cleared themselves of those charges.
I don't think that will ever happen. I think it would
You don't think anyone's going to sue CDPR?
I don't think it'll ever succeed.
Sure. I think they'll maybe be sued.
Sure, that's
I don't
fine.
know
You can sue for
if
anything.
they would win. Yeah.
Yeah. There's capital G gamers running around here, so of course there's going to be a lawsuit. But I just can't imagine. I mean, it would destroy marketing, not just for games, completely.
Sure. Yeah.
It would destroy the entire industry, so I just can't see that ever happening.
I mean, in some ways, it feels like there's maybe a fair case here of, like, they did not clearly, like, indicate maybe that they were only showing, like, the PC release, and they withheld console copies for reviewers until a certain date, and they didn't let reviewers use any footage from their own gameplay. They could only use marketing footage for video reviews. Like, I don't know.
Plenty of that is not that...
Would a lawsuit win? I don't know enough about the law. I don't know the law, baby. Uh, but, like, is there something that feels a little skeevy about the way things went about this? Yeah.
Oh, there's definitely.
But at the same time, I wish the developers rest that they will not get for a while.
I just don't think. I mean, so many of the things that you listed, which are absolutely skeevy, are also not like are relatively industry standard practices, right? Like, it wouldn't be that weird to say you can't use your own footage. I don't know.
Usually it just, like, limits on the amount of footage or it limits, like, up to a certain period. Usually those are for spoilers.
Right.
Not for, like, anything else.
Well, sure. I'm not saying it's not extreme. I'm just saying it's not so far outside the realm of, like, what everybody does.
Sure.
So with that, or with, I feel like I was saying on Twitter, it's not that unusual for review copies to be mostly PC, right?
Sure. We should wrap up now, probably, and this is off topic, but there was apparently a New York Times article on this whole situation.
Games gonna get them months in advance.
Months in advance. I just saw lots of journalists on Twitter being like, LMAO.
Look, the New York Times is making a pointed comment about how this year has felt. Namely that every day is a month long. Anyway, folks. Emma, any final takeaways? If you were to give people one big piece of gaming marketing advice, what would it be?
It's a thorny, messy topic, so run your ideas by, like, 5 people, and at least 3 of them have to be not inside your company. Like, run it by a family member. You know, like, if you have, like, a marketing idea and you just go to your family member that doesn't work in games and you're like, how does this sound? And they're like, Bob, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I think that's what people need to do more of.
Bob, brass knuckles are illegal.
Exactly. If you had just asked, like, a friend, Bob wouldn't have gotten everybody arrested for having brass knuckles.
There's some other bad ones. There's other bad ones I didn't even talk about. The Watchdogs sending people a safe with the game in it, unmarked, beeping.
Just share these on Twitter this week. One every day.
There's so many. I can't tweet that Sega thing. That Sega thing will get us pulled off of Twitter.
Don't tweet the Sega thing.
Tag it like sensitive content.
Tweet fun ones.
Okay. Well, folks, do you have a favorite gaming marketing either fail or success story? How would you market your favorite game so that everybody knows that they should love it? Do you think that brass knuckles should be legalized in the United States? But only for game marketing purposes. If you have opinions on any of that, if you have opinions on Cyberpunk, please think carefully before sending them to us, is what I'll say. Neither Emma nor I have played it.
No.
So maybe the space is the Twitter echo chamber and not us. But we'll listen to it. That's fine. Anyway, the way you can reach us is on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Sisters, where you can see us doing our work marketing a games podcast. That's a whole episode in and of itself. The episode is...
Sure.
We have a Twitter. Also, you can check out our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games that are in the hat that we pull from every other week for our main episodes, and read our blog, where you can read long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend, where my boyfriend provides free publicity to the Kingdom Hearts series by saying dumb things about it, and Split Screen, where Emma and I are watching Coffee Prince and My Hero Academia.
There will be 2 split screens this coming week.
A Christmas miracle. I'm hoping to get...
There hasn't been a split screen for a month.
We've been
I've
watching
been a little
them.
preoccupied.
I'm hoping also to get the first Melody of Memory Click with Boyfriend up, and I'm working on another blog that I've talked about a little on the show before, so that's your tip to go back and listen to some episodes and see if you can figure out what I'm talking about. Finally, you should subscribe to the show. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Cast, anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find Talk This. Although you should probably search Talk This, It's Dangerous to Podcast Alone. It's easier to find it with the full title. Emma, we're talking about some games next week, if I'm not mistaken, for our last episode of 2020.
Yes, we are talking about Moon and Watch Dogs Legion.
Excellent. So be sure to tune in next time for that. In 2 weeks, aka in 2021, next year, it's a side quest where we'll be talking about our 6 weeks in gaming, but I don't know, maybe we'll talk about our game of the year and a little bit of a year in review too, since it'll be New Year's weekend. So that's it for this time, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Emma, do you wanna wrap it up?
Next week will be the revolutionary experience of your lifetime.
Gameplay footage may not represent actual games.